Well, there's been a concerning development in New South Wales as a new so-called equality bill is being brought before the state parliament. Joining us now to discuss the harm she believes this new legislation will impose if passed is Women's Forum CEO Rachael Wong. Rachael, great to see you. Thanks for coming on Outsiders. You've been warning about this bill. Tell us the history of it, what it means and why you are so concerned about it.
Thank you for having me on, Rowan. So this bill was introduced by independent MP Alex Greenwich last year in August into the New South Wales Parliament. It's set to be debated on the 8th of February. It includes a whole raft of incredibly concerning reforms. It's been introduced under the guise of equality for LGBT people, and yet at the same time undermines protections and rights for women and children. So there are too many things, to be honest, to discuss in relation to its content, because it amends a huge number of bills and introduces a huge number of amendments. But in particular, we're concerned about the introduction of sex self-ID, which will mean that anyone can change their legal sex, including children, and be considered as that sex for all intents and purposes under law. It also removes almost all of the remaining regulations and restrictions around prostitution, including coercing people into prostitution. That will be removed, as well as soliciting prostitution in or near schools, churches and hospitals. And it also introduces overseas commercial surrogacy, meaning that residents in New South Wales can go over to poor, disadvantaged countries and basically exploit women over there, rent their wombs, buy the children, bring them back to New South Wales, and that be entirely legal. So those are some of the concerning reforms that the bill includes. And it's been, as I said, debated on the 8th of February. It's been rushed through, to be honest, because it was introduced in August last year. It was announced at the end of last year that it will be debated in February, which is the first parliamentary sitting week of Parliament. There's been very little to no consultation with concerned women's and children's groups. Of course, there's been plenty of consultation with LGBT groups, particularly trans activists, including the likes of ACON, who are responsible for embedding gender ideology throughout Australian institutions like media, like business, like government. So, it's incredibly concerning, the content and the process surrounding it. And a lot of New South Wales residents don't even know that it's happening. And that's not their own fault at all, because it hasn't really been publicised. As I said, it's basically been rammed through.
Well, I don't recall this being an enormous election issue, so I don't think anyone was voting for this. But you mentioned self-ID. Does that mean we could have the situation where a man who identifies as a woman would end up in a female prison, for example? Because we've already got that happening in Victoria. We've got sexual predator we know of who is imprisoned in a women's prison, and the women there have got petitions. They've got all sorts of campaigns to have something done about this, but neither political side in Victoria is interested in hearing from them.
That's exactly one of the ramifications, Rita. So men who identify as women will be able to have that legally recognised in law and be able to access, for example, female prisons, bathrooms, changing rooms, refuges, all those kinds of things. And there won't be anything that women can do to stop them from being included in those, what should be female-only spaces. And for good reason. We know that things are broken up by sex because women are more at threat of biological males in relation to things like sexual assault or physical abuse or whatever. And so this bill will effectively eradicate single-sex spaces.
James.
And I mean, just on that also, you mentioned that even kids could self-ID. We've seen all sorts of problems around the world where young people have decided to self-ID as being of another gender. When their parents object, in some jurisdictions, we've seen this in the United States, the parents can have their kids taken away from them. They can be charged. Is there a danger that this then opens up the door to that sort of real attack on the family and the family unit and parental authority out of this bill?
Yeah, so this particular bill allows children under 16 to change their legal sex without their parents' consent if NCAT determines that it's reasonable. What's also concerning, though, is that there is other legislation also afoot in New South Wales, which Greenwich has also been involved with, and which the Labor government in particular is pushing, which relates to conversion therapy, bans on conversion therapy, which, to be honest, is just a Trojan horse for embedding gender ideology further into the state. And if that particular bill is anything like what we've seen in places like Victoria and anything like what Greenwich's draft bill has been like, then it will indeed criminalise parents and doctors and others who are trying to provide care to children who are struggling with gender dysphoria in a way that doesn't simply affirm their gender identity.